My name is Dan Finucane, and I'm currently a regent. I love folk music, blues music, and I love singing and playing with other people.
My name is Ian Peoples. I'm a Jesuit regent. I'm kind of a football fanatic. Most of my weekends are spent watching at least a few games. I'm probably one of the biggest Lionel Messi fans.
And we'd like to welcome you to our new show, MAGISTALK. Welcome back to MAGISTALK, where we explore the question, what is God calling me to today? I'm your host, Dan Finucane, and I'm joined by my friend and fellow Jesuit, Ian Peoples, as well as a couple of guests that we'll introduce here shortly. For our first few episodes, we've been outlining Ignatian spirituality. We've talked about seeking God in our daily lives, discerning difficult or big decisions, learning about how God invites us into greater freedom through learning about the spiritual exercises. And today we want to continue our conversation about discernment by talking about vocation.
And what do we mean by vocation? Vocation comes from the Latin word vocare, which means to call. As Catholics, we believe that each person is called to praise and serve God in a unique way, using all of their gifts, their personality, their particular talents. And as the Church taught at Vatican II, all people are called to a vocation of holiness. Often in the Church, we speak of specific vocations, whether to marriage or to religious life and priesthood, but we also speak about vocations to be lawyers or doctors or teachers. Today, however, we want to focus on religious vocations.
And since we've talked a little bit about Jesuit vocations in our first few episodes, we wanted to bring in some other voices from the Church to talk about the religious vocation. So for today's episode, we're hosting a panel to talk about what it feels like to be called and to accept the call to a religious vocation, to take vows as a religious woman or man in the Church. And so we're honored to have with us Sister Carlette Gentle of the Sisters of Charity of Nazareth, as well as Miss Miriam Juarez, the National Youth Coordinator of the Diocese of Belize, who is in the process of discerning with the Sisters of Charity. Both are from Belize. Sister Carlette is from Belize City, and Miriam is from Punta Gorda. So welcome to both of you. Thanks for being here.
Hi, everybody.
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you for having us.
So to get the conversation started, really just a first general question is, if you could share a little bit about who you are, what your current ministry is, and maybe a second part of that question is, what gets you excited about religious life, either as it's lived out or the possibility of entering into it? So whichever one of you wants to answer first, feel free.
I can start. I talk too much anyways. My name is Sister Carlette Gentle. I am Belizean. I was born here, grew up here, basically everything. I've been a sister for, this August will be 15 years. And I'm very proud of my 15 years. Right now, I'm in the ministry of working with the elderly population on Southside Belize City. We have 100 clients that we serve, and we offer services like transportation to and from their medical appointment. We have a social support group where they come out and gather. Of course, COVID has sort of slowed that down a little bit. We do minor house renovation, and we also have community health workers that do in-home visits for those that cannot come out, so the homebound. And we offer pantry also. So we pack pantry for those who need food assistance. So it's really a ministry that needs a lot of help right now. People are getting older and the services aren't there. So I'll answer that piece and then I'll leave the other one for later.
Okay.
Well, my name is Miriam Juarez and I'm from Punta Gorda town. I started getting curious about the Sisters of Charity actually from about 10 years ago when I started sixth form here in Belize City, St. John's College. So it's been a while since I've known the sisters. Some of them have taught me at St. John's College, and some of them have been my mentors throughout university and through my career. I am currently the youth coordinator for the diocese, and that means that my job is to assist the other youth coordinators from the different parishes to get training in leadership, in youth ministry, to accompany them through their spiritual formation, to do outreach. Sometimes they are in need of resources. Sometimes they want, retreats or activities for youths. So my job is to reach out to them and see how I can best assist. It's been a beautiful journey so far. I've been in this position for almost 2 years, and I have learned so many things about my country and about its people. So I am happy that I am able to have this experience during my discernment.
So, and it's basically been since the start of the pandemic almost that you've had this position. That's a very difficult time to be doing such important work. So thank you for that. And I know from previous conversations that we've had, you've named how important sisters have been to youth ministry throughout the country during this time especially. Can you say a word about that and maybe how these sisters have impacted youth?
Yes. First of all, I'd like to say thank you to all the religious in general, but I'd like to especially thank the women religious who have nurtured these youth groups throughout the years. To see that the youth groups have survived through this pandemic is a grace. I've been to the different districts, and we have different orders, religious orders for sisters, and they have been very open and hospitable to me. Most of them have a ministry with the youth, and so I've been able to experience them and also the youth ministry that they have in their parishes. And it has been an honor to be with them and to see the work that they have been doing.
So it sounds like their witness has been something that has really moved you.
Yes. I have been able to see their outreach. I think that is what is most appealing to me and attractive. Some of them walk for hours sometimes when they don't have a truck to go and visit the rural schools, the youth groups in the rural communities, and they enjoy it. I've been down south to with the Daughters of Charity, and in that area sometimes the youth groups are scattered in different places, and so they would walk to villages like Red Bank or villages like Cowpen from where they live in San Juan on Sundays to visit these youth groups.
Dedication.
Yes. Yeah. And in the more urban communities, to see, the constant outreach to the youths. They visit youths in their home. They have a relationship in the schools as well. So it's both in and outside of school. The impact they have on the families and the relationships they share, that has been inspiring to see.
And Sister Carlette, do you mind telling us a little bit about what led you to consider and seriously discern a vocation to religious life? Because we know that among men and women, religious vocations and vocations in general to priesthood or religious life, there's just not many people pursuing that vocation. And so 15 years ago or a little more, right? What led to that? What led to that
makes me
call?
even sound older than 15 years. Well, to be honest, when I was in high school, I loved cooking. People who know me know I love the kitchen. And my godmother is an associate to our community. So she ended up inviting me over to help the sisters cook one year. I was 16, but my family are cooks. So I've been cooking from I was like 7. So they invited me over to help the sisters cook for these groups that were coming. And I saw these sisters, I'm like, are these really sisters? Wow, they're laughing, they're dancing, this is what I want, They were so happy. And that's what attracted me. Of course, I didn't want them to know right away that I was interested. So I played a little game, but I was watching everything they did. And so one of the sisters came with a t-shirt, and it had, "You can be yourself and be one of us." And that pulled me in, And I was in high school, so my high school classmates, they used to call me Fudgy Fresh because my father's name is Fresh, and I used to sell, I wanted a pretty expensive tennis shoe that my mom wouldn't pay for. So I'm like, I'm going to get my own money. So I started to bake stuff and take it to school and sell. So I got way more than I wanted for my tennis shoe. But because I sell fudge, and they're already calling me Fresh, they said, "Yeah, Fudgy Fresh." But when they found out I wanted to be a sister, they started calling me Sister Fresh, right? And so they hung on to that. And that was my nickname almost all through high school, Sister Fresh, because was it second form or third form was when I figured out I wanted to be a sister. So going over to the sisters, I started to, break that little shell. After a while, I got to know them. And I'm like, you know what? I want to be one of you all. I want what you have. And I didn't know what that was. But I was dating too at the time, And I was dating and visiting these sisters, and I'm weighing this thing, and I'm like, what do I want? But even when I was with him, I'm like, I want to be a sister. So it was pretty evident after a while what I wanted. And so I started to communicate that more with the sisters. And finally, when I knew what I wanted, I told my brothers, my brothers are something else. But anyway, and he was like, yeah, we know that. It's like, that's nothing new. I guess I was shocking my own self that this is really what I wanted. And so after some years of being with them, because 16, I'm now 41, so if you think of it, I've been with the sisters more than half my life. And it's just a testimony to who they are and what they do. I did visit other communities, but you know which one will be yours. There's a feeling that goes with that. There's something within you that calls you to where you end up, And so I ended up with the Sisters of Charity, and I just love them. It's just something that becomes a part of you, becomes a part of me, and I wear it proudly.
Something you said that moved me is just talking about the laughter and the dancing. I mean, just, yes. And I remember meeting Father Greg Boyle for the first time a few years ago, and he was giving a talk, and one person asked him, one of the high school kids who was there asked him, what attracted you to the Jesuits? And he said, they were funny people. They were joyful people. Yeah. And I think that's a huge part of religious vocation, is that any vocation should be joyful. Yes. But I think sometimes the religious vocation doesn't get seen as a joyful one.
Yeah.
And I think just the way that you described it in your very presence, you're just a joyful person. So
thank you.
Thank you for kind of sharing that joy with us.
Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah.
And the sisters make that pretty evident too, when you're with them.
And it speaks to what Pope Francis talks about in the joy of the gospel, right? That when we live out our vocations, when we follow Christ with joy, that it's going to draw people in. And I don't know if the sisters were aware of what they were doing at the time or not, inspiring a vocation in you, but their joy is what did that. And that's a good reminder for all of us to make sure we seek out joy. I remember Pope Francis a couple years back told the Jesuits that we need to pray for consolation. And I think joy is rooted in the consolation that we receive from Christ, right? From a relationship with Christ and in a community as well. So that's super important. Sister Carlette and Miriam, if you want to talk about either of you, one thing we're interested in and want our viewers to see, or what are some of the challenges for discerning a religious vocation in Belize? What are things that you faced or are facing currently? Could you describe that? And maybe if there are any things that you think are particular to Belize, that would be helpful as well.
Mm-hmm. I guess I'm in the middle of it. Well, first of all, I think it takes for me, it took a certain level of openness and maturity to be able to kind of manage the challenges that I face. One, I would say, is that sometimes I get a bit lonely because not many people, as you said, are discerning in Belize. And so I would have wanted more people around my age to accompany me on this journey. How I've been able to manage that is by forming friends within my workplace. I really rely on the friendships of both those in discernment in the seminary in Belize. There are currently 4 guys who are in discernment, some more studying abroad, and I've been able to have meaningful friendships with them, work together with them. The Jesuits, there are some novices who are assisting me, a charity volunteer now. And so all these people have been supportive and supporting. It's incredibly important, I feel, to have the support of other members in society. When we look at lay people and the work that they do, the gifts that they bring, that also helps me to want to continue my discernment journey, to be inspired, to be motivated. I would say the older priests and nuns, they have also been instrumental in my journey because they have been so, their stories that they share, those have had impacts. Their lives, the examples that they have had have inspired me. For example, I grew up in a Jesuit parish, and I was very close to the Jesuits growing up. Some of my best friends are Jesuits, and some of them have gone. Some of them have gone from this life. Some of them have moved back to the States, and some of them are all over the world. But to see their lives and how it has, I guess, brought joy to other people, that has been, I guess, some of the ways that I have been able to manage and to really, I guess, face the challenges of discernment in this time. I would challenge our church right now and those in leadership to be more supportive of young people, especially young women in discernment. I think it's incredibly important that we have both men and women religious, and I see many opportunities for us. Perhaps things will change with, talks of the synod and all of that, but I'm still hopeful that amidst all of this, that we as a church, if we help each other, we will be able to face the challenges of the time.
Some practical challenges that I face all the time is just we're fewer in numbers. Therefore, we're not as evident out there, as I would say. Sisters of Charity of Nazareth don't have a school here in Belize. Therefore, it's not like we're known to the community. The number of sisters we have in the city now, it's pretty minor, I should say. So whatever we do, we try to expand ourselves, but you could only do so much with only a few people. So people don't really know who we are. And I'm sure with other sisters too, that might be something. So that's definitely one challenge for us. The COVID has definitely slowed things down. So I would probably make some dates to go out to different schools, have different meet with different classes just to have a little talk or something about community life. That hasn't really happened. So that has definitely slowed it down. And with churches being closed, at least we would meet people in church where we would get to talk to them and invite them to retreats. And even the retreats aren't happening as much in person because And I always think in person, you get to meet the person. It's not on a screen where you're limited to that little box. Just having that connection with somebody in person makes a big difference. And so those have really been huge challenges for us these past years. And I think one of the additional challenges is, for me personally, is that I work with the elderly. So trying to get young people with this ministry that I'm doing, though mind you, I do work with the family somewhat as well. But when I work with the family, it's then I realize that some people don't even realize or know who a nun or a sister is. You know, what does a sister mean? They thought I was a nurse because they call nurses in Belize sister. You know, so I'm like, no, I'm a religious sister. And so they get it, what does that mean? So that gets into a whole conversation. So you talk about not being evident here, but down here where we set our base, the roots, it's not there as much. We're not in schools. You know, we're not very evident right now to people. And our community does not wear a habit. We used to, but we wear the clothes of the day, you know, we fit in more with people. So even I go somewhere, people are like, you, that was sister? I know, I don't look like one, I don't act like one. I was like, what does a sister look like or act like, you know? And they're saying, well, they're old, they're white, I'm like, do I fit any of those categories? So it's an eye-opener to them as well. Say, yes, I am a religious sister. So what does that mean? They keep asking. Okay, I make a vow of poverty, of chastity, and obedience. Chastity, what is that? You know, so you have to go really into details, and you'll be amazed at how many times I have these conversations. But they want to know. And if you could break it down today in a Creole, hey, that's what I do. You break it down so that they could understand to a point where it's like, okay, all right, sister, yeah, we got ya, kind of a thing. And so it works out to like, all right, now can I get a vocation from your house? No, no, not really. But I would want to say too sometimes, because people have the interest to become sisters or priests or brothers or sisters, whatever it is, but they're hesitant. I would say try. If it's not for you, you would know. Just try it and put yourself out there. It might be difficult in the beginning and people might tease you because trust me, in high school, they teased me a lot. They were like, you want to be a what? You don't want to get married? You'll be a good wife. You're a good cook. You know, so I got it from all sides, but that made me even stronger. And it made me, know that this is what I want to do. Even though my friends were telling me, girl, you crazy. You know what you're going to miss out on and stuff like that. But if you know it's for you and God is calling you to this, you will know. Just be open to listening.
That's great. Thank you. And because I think one thing that you're pointing out is that we need to invite young people to consider the possibility of a religious vocation, of a priestly vocation. And your community, one of the great blessings I think that you're doing is that you're welcoming in Miriam, correct? That that you're kind of seeing what the life is like on the inside right now. Is that right, Miriam?
Yes. So I'm currently in discernment, and that means that I get to experience the sisters and actually living with them. So I've known Carlette before as a student, but the experience of living with the community has been such a profound experience. It's one, I think, teaching me to be a better human being because I live with a diverse community. And I think that's it's a blessing, but it's also a challenge to live with people from different age groups, different cultures, different perspectives. But man, it's such a growth that one can experience. And that is something that excites me about religious life in this time, that the communities are getting more close-knit and more diverse as well, because all people from all different parts of the world are living together. So I get to experience this rich culture. And I think in one way, I see that as Christ living in the world. If we can live together as a diverse community, then isn't that what God is calling us to do? What has really inspired me, I guess, is the example, the living example of being with the sisters. Carlette, coming from the city and myself from the town, and being able to face challenges together. Yes, we don't always agree. We see things differently.
Oh, yeah.
Very differently sometimes. But to be able to face these challenges and work it out, talk about it, to pray together, to be able to pray together even at the end of a long day, to share gifts, to share about our ministry. That has really been impactful for me during this time. And even keeping relationships from the past, like the sisters who have inspired me, to keep those relationships going, has really been impactful on my life.
And I'm glad you brought up the diversity, because it is challenging. It's not easy, living with women who have their own opinions of what should be and what shouldn't be. But what makes us better is that we communicate and we work that out. Mm-hmm. It's not quite easy, but if we said it, that we have to talk about this. When we work it out and we move on to the next thing, and I think that's one big thing that I've even learned from community, because I'm very mouthy, and so community in itself has toned me down, and okay, let's talk about this together. And so hearing the different ways that people see one thing, it's like, oh, well, I wasn't seeing it that way either. So just having that communication is vital to community survival.
Dan and I, in our novitiate, we learned about the importance of having what we call difficult conversations. So if you recognize friction with another member of the community, that rather than sitting on that and maybe stewing on it and allowing it to build, you go to the person and say, hey,
agreed.
I want to talk because I noticed this is going on, and let's clear the air. And how healthier would our communities be, in the society at large, and in the church as well, if we were able to do that, right? If we were able to do that a little more, to recognize and to say, hey, I want to talk about this, and to be able to clear the air in that way. And Dan, we also live with a diverse community ourselves.
Absolutely.
The oldest person in our community is
88
years old, so that's Brother Carl Swift. And then another man in his 80s, and then all the way down to guys in their 30s, Dan and I. So it is a diverse community.
And maybe going back to something that you both kind of alluded to, Miriam, you kind of offered a challenge to the church here. And Sister Carlette, you talked about how, there's a need for young people to also kind of step out and try. And it sounds like there's a need to kind of bring those two together. What advice would you kind of offer to the church here in Belize about how to bridge that gap? Because I think it's ultimately, it's the church. It's if we expect young people to meet us, that's a challenge for them. But if we can somehow go to them, how can we do that better?
Yeah, that truly is a challenge. And if you think of youths today, like even I invite my own niece to church sometimes, and they're like, that's boring, I don't want to go. So how do we create a church where it's inviting for youths? How do we create something that they would want to be a part of? And usually when we bring youths in, we want to form them from what we know. We don't invite them to share what they know and what we can learn from it. So it's a mutual thing. It's a give and take. And that's what we are not used to. So how do we challenge a church to give and take? There's so much that's happening in our societies that we have to learn that. I might want stuff my way. Yeah, because I'm always correct, But, just thinking of that mindset that so many of us have, I'm correct, so this is the way it should be. How do we open it up to youth to say, what you know, the gifts that you offer to society, to church, to home, I want to be a part of that too. How can you share that with me? We don't do that often enough. You know, we think, oh, they're young, they don't know anything. Trust me, they know a lot. Sometimes way more than we do, and to be open to that. So church, I challenge you, I challenge us, you know, to be open, to welcome, and use the gifts that our youths have today.
To add to what Carlette has just said, one of the things that I've heard the young church talking about is that we want more Belizean priests, we want more Belizean sisters, we want more Belizean missionaries. Well, we are the ones who are going to make that possible. My advice to any young person who is discerning vocation out there is to go for it. Take that leap of faith. Pray about it. I mean, I did take a long time discerning. I'm still taking a long time. But I think that part of letting go and just taking that leap of faith, it has challenged me. And it will continue to challenge me, I know. But it has been such a joyful experience, you know, and to be with the sisters and to actually live in ministry. I think that one of the ways that I can perhaps reach out to youth is through my own life, my own example, you know. And that's a challenge in itself because I have, you know, things that I'm not too pleased about. Sometimes I do get mad, and sometimes I do funny things, you know, that might not be, you know, according to the rules. And like what Carlette said, you know, it's important to come with an open mind. And I think an open mind, part of my openness, I think, comes from my spiritual formation. And that doesn't come, you know, overnight. I visit a spiritual director, a sister too, who has been with the church for many, many years. Sometimes spiritual direction comes from very everyday experiences, you know, looking at the youths and hearing their family problems, looking at their financial struggles, some youths having to work long hours to meet expenses, some of their social struggles with addictions, you know, with abuse. These are not easy things to grapple with, but they are so important to listen to, especially from the youths, because by listening to these stories, I get to share mine, and they get to share theirs. So it's a mutual, I see it too as a mutual relationship. And I think that is what I would like, you know, the church, and I would challenge the church to be open through discernment, through prayer, and that prayer can take many forms, of actually being with people on the ground, living their struggles, living their joys.
I'm glad you brought that up. If I could just add one more thing.
Please.
The support system. We invite young people, we want them to join us. And it's not just a come and we got you, let's move on to the next thing. No, we need to be there to support. And it could be, it's a lot of work, you know, if you think of it, because you have your work or your ministry that you're doing, but you have to remember, you also have this young person that's with you to offer, you know, you're journeying with them. And that's what we have to look at. It's a journey with. It's a together. It's not like I'm above you, you have to do what I say. No. It's a journey together that we're moving along. And I would also urge whoever is in or responsible for younger people coming in, you know, just stop and say, you know what, I'm here to support you, please. If you need to talk, let me know. And a lot of youths want to talk, but to feel that, okay, I'm going to get into that point where, she's too busy. I don't want to do that kind of a thing. You know, I challenge that with Miriam too, because indeed, I'm always going. And so sometimes she might want to talk. And, you know, she was like, Carlette, can I get on your calendar? Or something like that. You know, but I want her to do that. It reminds me, brings me back to say, okay, I promised I would support you. I'm here. I'm here, Miriam. So that's, okay, I'll shut up now. So that's
thank you for that. And we're about to wrap up. And I want to thank you both, Sister Carlette and Miriam, for being with us today.
Thanks for inviting us.
Of course. It's wonderful to have you. Speaking of vocations and inviting young people to consider it, if a young woman were to be interested in the Sisters of Charity of Nazareth, where could they go to find out more about your ministry and maybe inquire about vocations?
Yeah, actually most young women that are coming today go on our website, Sisters of Charity of Nazareth, and they find out that we have a section there to how to become a sister.
Okay.
And they log on to that, they ask questions, whatever, and we get it, and we move on from there. Here in the city, hey, if you see me, please feel free. But we're on Princess Margaret Drive, right in front of the fisheries. That's where we're located. So if you ever want to just drop us a line or something, or a phone number for the house is in the phone book, Sisters of Charity of Nazareth. You can contact us that way as well.
And we'll be sure to link to your website on our show notes on YouTube and other social media.
And if you just want some time to talk with someone about your journey or share, or something, you just want someone to listen to, I'm always available. Well, I'm always open, not always available, but open to hearing it. I'm at the Diocesan Youth Ministry. I also do outreach to the different parishes and youth groups. So I've been able to meet young people, and some of them have voiced a desire to, want to be more involved with the church, and also to discern a religious vocation. So I know that exists in our diocese.
Wonderful. And for young men out there as well, if you were to be interested in discerning a vocation with the Jesuits, be at jesuit.org. We'll link that in our show notes on YouTube and other social medias as well. So to wrap up, we'll ask our question.
Yep. As you know, we always ask a question at the end of our episode, and we invite our guests when we have them to answer the question too. And we're ending on a note of hope today. I think this has been a really hopeful conversation, but we'll end on hope just to put an exclamation point on it. Who is someone in the church right now? It can be the church here in Belize or elsewhere, in Rome, in another part of the world. A person in the church right now who's giving you hope.
For me, to be honest, I live with Miriam, and Miriam has been giving me some hope. You have been, when you try so long, to get somebody and you're working with other youths, whatever, Miriam answering that call just to discern, gives me some hope, for the future.
Thank you, Carlette. And I could say the same thing. Having the Belizean sisters as part of the Sisters of Charity has really inspired me. Sister Barbara Flores, she's from down south as well. The Jesuits who have given so generously to Toledo, where I come from. I think that was the start, the unfoldings of my vocation, seeing them serving and walking in the mud to reach the church. Sometimes on horseback or taking a long trek. Father Sam Wilson has been a dear friend of mine, and to see his passion going out to the villages, although he doesn't speak the language, but his love for the people. And he gives me a lot of hope for the church. Father Marcos Rodriguez, newly ordained Belizean priest. I want to continue to pray for him and journey with him, to see him and the seminarians at St. Benedict Seminary, as well as those studying abroad, gives me a lot of hope. Jason, my Jesuit volunteer and Jesuit novice, he's been accompanying me and now Lauren from the charities. So all these people give such, I guess, so much hope to me. So
Wonderful.
yeah.
I think for me, I'll throw out another Belizean. Cisco Woods, who is a local businessman, does a lot of work with men in the south side of Belize City, especially a lot of at-risk individuals. And he's such a good example of putting faith into action and really using one's gifts, talents, and resources to uplift others in the community. And I think he has such a passion for building up Belize, especially those who many people might want to just write off as, people who are involved in gangs. A lot of people don't want to pay attention to that part of the community until it's right in your face, whether it's on the news with shootings or with whatever else. But Cisco goes to guys, he talks to them, he helps them get work. He has this wonderful method of really making sure that when he's in a part of the city doing work, that he's involving guys who live in that area. And then he also conducts these retreats that I've been on a couple of them with leaders in the community, and he takes them out and has these wonderful retreats where he gives these guys an experience of God's love, an experience of the freedom that we have when we sort of get outside of the status quo of what we're used to. When we step outside of that space, and allow God to encounter us, powerful things happen. So I think Cisco is just doing amazing things in the community, and he really gives me hope. Dan, what about you?
So this is maybe, a cop-out answer. I don't think it is, because he really does give me hope, but I'm going to say Pope Francis, and I know maybe that's obvious, but for me, as I've been listening to our conversation, and the three of you give me hope, being with you this morning. But I think one of the things that I'm hearing is, especially in the last question and answer, was talking about the importance of listening, the importance of journeying together. And it got me thinking about the Synod and how we can be a more synodal church. And I appreciate Pope Francis being prophetic and being willing to call us out as a church to really look at ourselves and how we journey together. And I think to be honest with one another about ways that we're doing this in a really great way and the ways that we still really need to grow and need to learn from one another and the places, frankly, where we've failed. So I'm excited and very hopeful by the example and witness of Pope Francis and his willingness to invite us into a big conversation.
Thanks, Dan, and thank you all for joining us for this great conversation with Sister Carlette and with Miriam. We want to thank you again. And if you have any suggestions for topics or things that you'd like to talk about, or maybe people that you'd like us to interview and have on the show, please leave them in the comments, whether it be on Facebook or on YouTube or whatever social media that you might be viewing this on. If you're viewing it on Guadalupe Media's channel, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.